Welcome to episode number 29 of the ISPC Tailboard Talks. I'm your host, Mark. Back from his summer hiatus is my co-host, Jerry. So how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Good to be back. Glad you didn't say vacation.
Well,
I think I got a few days off in there, but it was a lot of work.
yeah.
Got a chance to go to Colorado and to the Colorado Rural Electric Association show where we sponsored the lunch break.
Yeah.
Man, what a great show. There's worse places in the world to be.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
I've kind of been down this summer just working and trying to get back office stuff done just till the last couple of weeks. I was down at Norfolk and did some training with the Navy, and then this week here I got home about 1 o'clock last night, or 1 o'clock in the morning, I guess today actually, from Texas, and then back to Texas again on Monday morning. So my home away from home. I ought to have a second home in Texas.
Yeah, dude, it's nuts. Yeah, it's great being busy, but geez, man, sometimes you miss your recliner or your bed.
Yeah, for sure.
But one thing I have missed more than anything is actually getting to hang out and do the tailboard talks. And today we've got somebody that I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet. I'm very interested to hear him speak, to hear what he's got to say, and to get going as far as that goes.
Yeah, so today we're doing cable identification and remote cutting and probably a lot of other stuff underground. So I know enough in the I shouldn't say maybe to get me in trouble. I'm not too bad at it, but I definitely don't have the experience that our guest does today. So that's a good thing. I enjoy these when we talk to people that it's not my forte, because then I learn just as much as everybody else on this podcast. So, always good. So, all right, man, how about giving the old sponsor a shout out?
The old sponsor message. Today's sponsor is one of my favorite things in the world, T&D PowerSkills. Today, safety and training managers need flexible and effective solutions, and that's where we at T&D PowerSkills comes in. 78-unit curriculum designed for adult learners. You can customize your training, scale your delivery, and control your costs, whether you're training just a few crews or if you're running a full apprenticeship program across multiple states. We've got you covered. Visit tdpowerskills.com to learn more. That's tdpowerskills.com.
Thanks to T&D, they do probably the majority of our episodes. We have some other sponsors that hop in there from time to time, but always good.
It's because we kind of know a guy.
Yeah, I guess. So, all right. Well, our guest today, another Mark. So Mark Savage, owner and managing member of Deadbreak, LLC. So Mark's a utility professional with over 2 decades of hands-on experience when it comes to splicing, underground utility installations, underground projects, and I believe some other stuff from talking to Mark as well. And so welcome today, Mark. Glad you could join us, man. How you doing?
Yes. First off, I'd like to thank you both for having me, inviting me on the podcast.
Sure thing.
It's an honor to be here. I'm looking forward to this discussion, especially because I think it's something in this field that gets taken for granted and is a lack of training that we have, per se. So, just a little bit of background about myself. I've been on a couple other podcasts, so the world out there is probably sick of hearing this, so we'll keep this a little bit short version. So I did 8 years in the Marine Corps. I'm a service disabled veteran. And I did 2 years actually after that in the reserves as well. So 10 years total. Then I got into this field. I read meters when I first started for a short time. And then I went to climbing school, injured myself on the first day, first time up the pole. And then 4 weeks later, I got an opportunity to go in the underground. 24 years ago, now today, I never looked back.
Yep.
So I am a cable splicer through and through, have dual ticketed, have some experience in the air as well. But I don't claim to have any experience up in the air, but I'm a great bucket buddy. I can help you. I'm a good hand, just don't trust myself up in the air by myself.
Yep. Gotcha.
So that's a little bit about myself and my history. But once again, it's an honor to be here. So thank you, gentlemen.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you, Mark. Thanks for your service. You're sitting here with 2 other veterans. We have a couple more veterans in our company, so thanks for that. Always good to.
No other Marines, though.
Well, yeah, that's true. We got a lot of Army and what was Jim? Was Jim a
Jim
Marine?
was Army, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. For some reason, I was thinking he was a Marine, but okay.
We're hard to find. Crayon poisoning runs rampant. Yeah.
Good deal. All right, so let's jump right in. We'll start with our ISPC Tailboard Talk, and really we're going to just touch on the title of our podcast today when it comes to cable identification and remote cutting and so on, and really to emphasize the importance of identifying cables. Right, I've done enough work in the underground world, to know. You open up a pad mount or something to that nature, and there's no labeling, right? Or the labeling's laying on the bottom of the pad mount. Now what do I do, right? You just can't assume, oh, this tag goes here and this tag goes here, or whatever the case may be. And especially when you then step into the realm of, okay, now I'm going to cut something, right? Rather than just open an elbow and place it on a feed through or something to that nature, right? So it enters a whole nother dynamic into the I got to make sure I got the right cable or things are not going to probably go right. So just a couple things we kind of want to touch on in the tailboard talk around this. One, and we've kind of already touched on it, never assume, right? We always got to verify that we're on the right cable. Things can go south very quickly if we're not properly identifying the cable or the circuit that we're on. All the way from when you're trying to just de-energize something, or in this case, if you're doing energized, cutting, we definitely need to make sure we're on the right cable. Test before you touch. Whether we're doing de-energized work or whether we're doing energized work, we still need to test and make sure that that we know the status of the facility that we're about to work on. We always want to double check our labels, right? Like I said in the beginning here, I'm sure you've run into it too, Mark. You get, whether it's in a vault or a manhole or in a pad mount, not always is everything labeled or labeled correctly, right? And so making sure that stuff is correct is probably half the battle, right? Another one, have a second set of eyes, right? You can't talk enough about having that buddy there to kind of peer check you, right? And it's very easy to make assumptions when you're working by yourself, right? And so if you have somebody working with you, a lot of times you can quash those assumptions before they come mistakes, right? Or before they come incidents by having somebody else to kind of have another set of eyes over your shoulder. Always want to inspect your tools. Watch out where you position yourself in regards to the hazards in the energized facilities. Communicate. Can't say enough about communication, especially if you're working with multiple groups of people, right? A lot of important things there when we're talking about, again, not only just underground work, but utility work in general, right? And so, anything you want to add in there, Mark, when it comes to any of those points?
Yeah, I think we're going to touch base on a lot of those where it comes into where we're tying in when we get into the questions portion. But I really like to emphasize, because a part of this tends to come into, when you're switching, if you have to do it and you're doing a test clearance, and maybe some of this work falls within a test clearance. Mm-hmm. So effectively using the three-way communication just like you would use while doing a switching order. So keeping those same characteristic traits and those same habits, past practice habits, is a good thing to lead into the thing. So even a second set of eyes, even if that second set of eyes isn't qualified, if you can explain the job enough to say, hey, I need to be looking for this, and it needs to say this. So they can at least stop you from making a mistake. So I love all that you have there. And yes, we will touch base on some of that.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point, Mark, and I always like to stress this. Sometimes an inexperienced set of eyes, second set of eyes, can almost be better than a second set of experienced eyes, because that second experienced person, and it's human nature, we all do it. If we're two journeymen working side by side, we tend to make assumptions about the other person we're working with, especially if you worked with them for a long time, right? Hey, this guy knows what he's doing. Yeah, I'll kind of keep an eye on him, but I, I don't have to tell him how to do his work. He knows what he's doing, and sometimes that can be bad.
Correct.
So,
I would add that to its implied instructions. You add implied instructions into implied knowledge. So this is a 24-year journeyman. I've never met you. I assume that you know what you're doing.
sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's bad on all of the accounts. That's what we're trying to change for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and move into our, well, I guess before we move into our guest segment, Mr. Jury, you want to give another shout out to our sponsor today?
Absolutely. T&D PowerSkills is bringing you today's episode of the Tailboard Talks. Something very near and dear to my heart. 78 units designed as a full 4-year apprenticeship program, but it is modular and you can pick and choose. So if, say, you only need underground training, we can do that as well. So give us a look. tdpowerskills.com. Shoot me an email, jerry@tdpowerskills.com. I'd love to tell you all about it and how we can help you, whether you have one crew of 5 people or you have 555 people or over 1,000. We can scale up directly for you. tdpowerskills.com.
All right. I guess let's jump into it, Mark. And so really this is all about, you today. So I'll throw some questions out there, and we'll chat back and forth. But really, like I said, you're the expert on the call today, and so we're wanting to get. I want to get some knowledge, just like everybody else is getting some knowledge on this thing. So I guess we'll just start out, right? And so you got a lot of years of experience, and we kind of touched on it in the Tailboard Talks segment, but cable identification, probably one of the most critical steps when you're working in the underground world, right? And being able to identify that you're on the right circuit or you're on the right conductor or cable, as you start to, and that starts with switching, or, if you're going to do energized work versus de-energized work. But, why is this step so important to your success in the underground world?
Okay. So it's a great question, and it's one that we're going to first answer by, unfortunately, why this is such an issue in our field is because we see people cutting into live cable still to this day across the United States within this industry. And, we could probably put our thumb on 2 of the major, issues would be lack of knowledge and lack of training. Those are the 2 things that are out there. They just don't know that it exists. So the why it's critical is because in order to do anything in the underground, if it's not new, we are cutting into existing prior energized cable. Mm-hmm. Not only does that cable have to be, we have to bleed off the induction, right? But it's if you were to cut it, just like pulling an elbow, how many times have you seen someone go and pull an elbow and take their hand and put it right onto that pin without bleeding off the induction, and next thing you know, they get a black mark or a hole in their finger or thumb, yeah. Right? So these are the things of why it's crucial, because that cable has the capacitance still built up in it. It can get you. Yeah. And it's a hidden knowledge, right? So yeah. In the underground, in the overhead, we can look up, we can look right, we can look left, north, south, east, west, whatever, and we can see, hey, I don't have a connected line down that way, or yeah. That pole is down. There's no transformer on that pole that used to be there. We can physically see that, and then we can physically see our isolation points and our grounding points. In the underground, whether that is in a duct line, if it's in a manhole system, a vault, whether it's a URD trenching system, we most of the time cannot see where it comes from or where it goes. Mm-hmm. So the critical step in this isn't anything other than identifying the correct cable, and then cutting the correct cable. All of that other stuff is just the precursor to getting to where we need to be. So the critical steps of switching and all that stuff, the work, that's critical, but that comes after. The switching is critical, but that comes prior. The main step is getting to that point, identifying the right piece of equipment, and making sure that that is de-energized. So
Well, I say PPP, proper preparation prevents, and in this case, it could be critical
that's exactly right.
issues. And I think what a lot of overhead guys don't realize is that when you take an arc flash and you put it in a confined space, such as the underground, the pad mount transformer, it becomes a lot more direct. It becomes a direct explosion.
Yes.
What do they call it? Shaped. It's a shape charge then.
Correct. So let's take a URD setting. So most of our industry, right, that's going to listen to this would be in that URD setting, right? I'm on a smaller side in manholes and vaults. The industry now is usually 8-foot stick, okay? But you're still going to feel, the 3,000 to 5,000 degree arc flash that takes place of that. Now it's in that exposed air, so it's going to rise out as well, so it's not as much, but you're still going to take it. The concerns are when you're inside of a manhole and you're switching these things. I came from, and I know this is crazy, I came from an area where we used a 2-foot shotgun inside of a manhole. So most people say that doesn't exist. They've never seen it. Yes. Well, when you have MVIs, vacuum switches that are on the wall, and you're in a manhole, you can't fit a 4-foot or a 6-foot or an 8-foot stick.
Yeah.
But those things have to be switched. Now, 99% of the time, it's not switching energized, right? But all in all, you get that one time when it's there and you're
Sure.
Identifying the cable that needs to be isolated is crucial for that when you're closer to it. So yes, very, very valid picking up on that point as well, for sure. Yep.
So let's dive a little bit into this, Mark. And so obviously there's a process, right? And everything we do in the utility space, whether it's overhead, underground, substation, network, no matter what, almost everything we do has a procedure, right? A specific way that things get done. And, I've had these conversations till I'm blue in the face in the 20 plus years I've been in this industry, especially when I was a supervisor. Sometimes the right way is the only way, right? Guys all say, well, what's it matter if I do it this way or this way? I still get to the same answer or the same end result. Well, yes, but what risk are you taking to get to that end result, right? And so when it comes to, again, we've said this is very similar to switching, right? And switching is a very cut and dry, crystal clear process or procedure using 3-part communication, give out the answer or, give out the statement that you want, get confirmation in it, and so on. So when it comes to best practices in what we're talking about, because like you mentioned right out of the gate, this is still an issue across our industry of people cutting into energized cables, getting on the wrong cable. So what is, in your mind, what is the proper process or procedure that somebody listening to this that maybe is just coming into the underground world, or even some folks that have been in it a while, maybe they're getting, unfortunately, we still have in our industry these days too, where the younger generation comes in and is learning from the older generation, right? And not necessarily is that older generation always doing it the best possible way, right? Let's not leave the elephant in the room, right? Like it is what it is. I mean, I see it in a lot of the training I go do as well, right? Grounding and bonding and other types of training. Walk us through what that process looks like, right? I walk up to a URD pad mount, or I go down in a vault and I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. You don't have to get into every little idiosyncrasy, but like, what's that process look like to get somebody to the point where, hey, I'm about ready to pull that elbow or cut that cable, and I've got a pretty darn good feeling nothing's going wrong?
Yes. All right. Well, I'm going to walk you through a flow chart that I have.
Okay.
And this flow chart is, if you're cutting a live cable after you go through this flow chart, you did something wrong following the flow chart. So that's it. And just to reemphasize what you had said, Mark, too, was that's my goal in where we're at, is starting from the bottom up, especially focusing on the underground. There's too much tribal knowledge out there that has come with no formal training.
Yep.
And no offense to anybody that's out there, it's just what happens in the industry. Well, the only way that we can change that is from the bottom up. So we need to get a hold of these young guns, these young apprentices that are going to be in this industry and want to change this for the future. So to all those that are out there, I'm going to list basically a flow chart. If you listen to the questions and you follow these questions, you answer yes or no to these questions, they should guide you right in to where you would be cutting a de-energized cable. Okay? So we're going to start. The first question that we get is the voltage of the cable that you worked on above 1,000 volts? Is it up to 46,000? Okay, so that's the question. Am I working on a primary? Am I working on secondary? Or am I working on underground transmission? If your question is you're working on secondary, bang away, cut it. You got it. It's live. You can do it. Just be careful, obviously. We do that in a network system all the time. Obviously, overhead, we do that all the time, so that's no problems. With your high voltage, anything over 46, obviously there's going to be some issues with that. So we're going to address that, and that's going to go back to whoever is in charge. If you're trying to cut a transmission, your dispatch and your supervisors are going to have a plan already set and established for you. And by the way, there's not multiple transmission lines running side by side. So your identification on your underground transmission should not be that difficult to get, right? So that's another one. So we've answered that question. It does fall within the medium voltage range. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to research all available records and perform a complete and thorough field inspection evaluation. So whatever that means is we're going to go out and we're going to get our records that are inside. Then we're going to go do a manhole, vault, whatever inspection. Is the paperwork that we have, that we get back from our engineers, does that actually follow what is in the field? And if it isn't in the field, then we can start to make corrective actions, right? Hey, we know it's this cable. We know for a fact it's this cable. It's labeled wrong. It's this, that, the other, blah, blah, blah. What do we need to do to make those corrective actions? So we're just verifying step by step by step here. We've put in some buffers. Okay. So the next question would be, after we've evaluated everything, is the cable already isolated? Has it already been isolated, de-energized, cut, capped, grounded, isolated, de-energized, left in the hole, abandoned? What is the case?
Yeah.
So if the answer is no, if it's an abandoned cable, okay. If it's yes, then you would go through your abandoned cable procedures, how to properly identify abandoned cable, and then pull it out, which would most likely be a continuity test, some sort of continuity test, okay? If it is an abandoned cable, if it's not an abandoned cable, then you have to go back up to the start. Because, well, if it's not an abandoned cable, what type of cable is it? How did you get down to here and say it was abandoned? So it's not going to allow you to go on. So go back up to the top, which is a great fail-safe. All right. Your next thing is, after the cable's isolated, are your grounds present and visible? Right? What does that mean? That means if it's your grounds are present and visible, what's the one thing when you have that you can now do? Test. So if you can have those two things, now you're in the element of never being able to identify a piece of cable without using electronic trace. That is your goal. So your goal is to be able to electronically identify every single cable that you're going to cut. So you can only do that if you can put grounds on both ends and you can attach that. So the thing's going to be, if the answer is yes, it's going to say cut and electrically trace, right? Boom. You document it on your job brief, all right? So next one's going to be say it's no. Say you can't get a electric trace on it. So is it a minor repair? Are we trying to relocate that cable? Or, is it just we need to identify it because the cable's in the manhole and we don't know? If that answer is yes, we're going to make sure that the cable's de-energized and then try to put an electronic trace on it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting in those things where you got to put that trace on. The next one that comes down, is it a faulted cable? So if it's a faulted cable, you probably won't be able to do what? Put any piece of test equipment on it, right? Because you need that return. So then in lies, okay, if it doesn't, now you're going to have to start into the other thing. There are procedures that you need to do by your company. Okay, if it's a faulted piece of cable, mid-span, in the duct line, how would we identify it?
Right.
And then your company comes up with the rules to go from that. Okay, so we're walking through that, and then we can keep coming down. Is the fault visible or is it up a duct line? All right. So what are we using? Are we using the signal generator? Are we using the thumper to verify? Did we use, are we actually looking for the thumper, listening for the thumper? Or did we use a TIMCO, where we're going to go down and we're just identifying it because we have a feeder from substation to all ends, and we want to identify that whole circuit in one night, but it's 8 miles of cable. So we put that on and we're going along the path, right? So what are we using? If it's a faulted cable, we're going to use the thumper. If it's we're just trying to identify, we're going to use something like the TIMCO. So that just depends on what type of equipment we're going to use because of the fault. And then you just have to verify that. So once you see it one time, that fault, right? When you go back to the hole, you're going to shut that off and you're going to have them get the manhole set up. And before you go down and puncture, you're going to send that signal another time so the crew that's there can visually see one other time that that's the cable that's on. Okay, so that's the real procedures to going down. But we can walk through like a URD where let's open up. You've got an A, B, and a C phase, 500 transformers all in a apartment complex. They jump around. When you laid your cable down into most of it was direct buried. You're going to lay it down and you're going to have 6 sets. You don't know which one because if you installed singles, you're all getting the A phase. So every piece of cable that's in that trench has an A phase. So how are you going to be able to identify those things, right? So that's where we're talking about the identification, isolating those elbows and putting that in, amp testing and things of that nature. So there's other different procedures that we can get through, but that's a step-by-step thing. Is you should walk yourself through some sort of step. And if there are companies that are out there that don't have that, we at Deadbreak, we do write procedures, cutting and remote cutting, cable identification, policies and procedures, because if you're not in a network system, it's going to be a little bit different. If you're not I came from situations where we would work ungrounded quite often because you're working in between switches that you cannot physically ground. Right. So that's the case. So if you're working in a system like that, there's different policies than a system. If you just need it for URD, that's a simpler one than it is in a manhole network system. So hopefully that answers that. That's a longer version of the process, but hopefully that answers some questions out there.
Yeah. What's your process? And hopefully it's not that you accidentally already cut the wrong cable, but when you're talking about labeling, right? And there's a couple different aspects here, right? There's just no label there, right? And then I got to go through some processes to identify that cable that we've already touched on. But let's go to the other end of this where the cable is labeled, and let's say partway through your process, something just doesn't seem right, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, maybe this cable isn't labeled correctly. Maybe somebody got labels swapped, right? And what I think is cable XYZ is actually cable ABC.
Correct.
Right? And again, hopefully you identify this before you cut the wrong cable. But I guess maybe the better question is, going with what we were talking about a little earlier, never assume. If anything, is there anything for the people that are listening? I guess, at what point do you trust that everything is correct? And at what point do you say, I'm not sure this cable's labeled right here, right? Things are starting to not make sense. Like where's that where do you
Yes.
get to that point? You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes,
We'd
sir.
like to assume that everybody did their job right leading up to this point, but we all know accidents or mistakes happen. And I know I've ran into stuff in the field where this just doesn't seem right here. Something's not jiving here, right? So,
Yes, I would do. So I'll give you a really good example on this one. This happens quite often. And so up north, you had a tendency the companies didn't allow contractors on the property.
okay.
Okay, so we didn't want, just didn't want you touching the equipment. And this is the reason why. Down south, I ran into this problem. So we would do the vault work and the contractors would do the manhole work. Well, if the manhole work called for that feeder to be changed, that feeder was changed in the manholes that were worked on, but none of the other manholes nor any of the vaults. Because the contractor's not going to go in, and they would if they were told to, right? But they're not going to, so that gets lost in the sauce. So you can have, when I first started at one of the places I worked, 6 months in, I had a guy, supervisor, tell me, Mark, I know for a fact that's the circuit. And I said, listen, I understand that you know for a fact that that's the circuit. But I also know for a fact that if I switch that, okay, without someone writing that down that's saying, this is for a fact, this switch, that I will lose my job, you won't. Okay? So, we've got to make sure that we focus on that. So before that, here's the options that I have. Okay? So, I'm going to look at the cable. The jacket that's in the jacket has pertinent information that's on that jacket that I can link up to the stuff that's in the manhole.
Yeah.
Is it the same manufacturer? Okay. Is it the same voltage? The footage markers. Okay, if it looks like it's a 60-foot piece and I know it's the same footage and I have, 0546 and the other end it's 0027, well, there's 400 and some odd foot of cable. That can't be my cable.
Right.
Right? So we've got that. So your cable jacket identification, that's number one. The footage, two. Duct configuration. So whatever those ducts are going out, that duct configuration has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So when we work in a manhole system, those ducts are all labeled. And I don't mean they have a number on it, but how we count, each company has a procedure on how you count ducts. So you can start from your top left and go right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So all in all, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a 3/3. What I mean by that is, and then we're going to say, my 3/3 is all a 6-inch encased duct. So I have a 3x3 6-inch in the vault. You should have a 3x3 with 6-inch in your manhole. If we have that, we're good. I'm in hole 1. Are you going to be in hole 1? No. You're going to be in hole 3. So we're mirroring each other. So we need to make sure, if I'm in 1 and you're in 1, we're not on the same cable. Or maybe we are. Maybe the conduit got rolled. So those are the things. The last thing that you would do, if it's obviously de-energized, is a tug test. So if you can amp test it and you can proof test that it's de-energized, you can basically put a rope on it and give that thing a little tug, 1 inch. That's all you need. Okay, it moved, we're good. If you can proof test it, that it's de-energized, you could run a snake through it. And additionally, with the last thing, you got to be careful with this, but you can blow air through it. So those are 5 or 6 different ways that if you don't have the ability to send an electronic trace down on that cable, right, how you can do it. Because the original question is tagging and mapping. The biggest you have, when I build that, for it to go to the engineering department and then get updated, it could be 6 months. Outages don't wait 6 months to be updated. So that's the biggest thing. And then when you're done, you have to, in a utility standpoint, we get so narrow-minded at times because we're focusing on the task at hand. Whereas we got to remember that, hey, that whole feeder needs to be retagged. and we're our own worst enemy. I'm not going down in every hole and doing all that. We'll get it when we go there the next time, which we have to stop, right? It's we're breeding our own laziness and our own faults, right? You guys probably agree with that in the industry.
Yeah, and more than likely, you might not be the one down that hole the next time, right? And the next guy, yeah, it just.
Correct.
I want to touch on something, Mark, you mentioned about essentially what you were saying was don't assume. We're going back to that don't assume anything, right? I had an incident early on in my career. I was actually in college. We're out doing a project in the community for Habitat for Humanity for our electrical class. And we go to a AA ballpark, and our job was to tear out all the old wiring, and we were going to put in new wiring and redo the wiring and stuff for the lighting in the ballpark. And so first day we go there, I don't know, there was probably a dozen of us in the class, and the instructor, we kind of huddle up there. We're doing our job briefing and talking about what's going to do, and he starts assigning guys to do stuff, and myself and another guy, he said, "Hey, in under the bleachers right here, there was a 16 by 16 by 8-inch deep steel junction box." And he said, "Everything has been tested, de-energized. We got to go in there and pull all the connections apart so we can start pulling wire to adjacent junction boxes." So, I mean, we hadn't, at that point, right, hadn't been in the class that long, right? We hadn't, none of this stuff that we're talking about today, and that now I know is gospel, 20 some years later. I'm like, oh, okay, right? So we go in there. The lid was already open. There was no lid on it, right? So somebody was obviously in there. I wasn't the first one to go in that box. So I go in there, and the box is probably, it's on an angle, right? Probably about 4.5 feet off the ground or something. So obviously I'm not standing under this thing. I'm crouched down like I'm catching baseball, right? And I got my arms on the side of the box to balance myself, and I'm taking connections apart. And I got to about the fourth connection, took the nut off, and it was stranded copper, THHN copper, right? And so I go to untwist the copper strands, and when I touched that sucker, it blew me out underneath those bleachers against the concession stand behind the walkway. And I'm like, what in the freak just happened? And
you probably didn't say it just like that.
I didn't, but I'm being nice, so that Kenneth don't have to do so much editing. But man, oh man. And so, Mark, really the point I'm trying to make is I've had this conversation. I can't tell you how many times over my career people say to me, "I told you that was dead. I already checked that. Don't worry about it." There's the open point. You can see it's dead. Listen, folks, Mark said, I'm going to be the one that loses my job. And that may be true. But to even take it a step further, and I just had this conversation in a training class this week in Texas. I said, you are the one that is going to suffer the consequences if you don't check. Not your buddy that told you it was dead and you believed him. He's going to be the one there standing watching you get hammered.
Yeah. He'll get therapy, you'll get a box.
Right? Oh, man. Cannot stress enough the importance of, I don't care how good a friend they are, how long you've worked for them. Listen, if these 10 fingers of mine, and I still got all 10, so I'm thankful for that, right? And that's probably because of the due diligence I do after that incident, 35 years ago. But if my fingers are going in there, I'm the one testing, right? Or at least I'm standing there watching you test, and I am personally verifying that I see where you put the voltage detector, meter probes, whatever you're using to test. I'm seeing it with my eyeballs, and I've told 40-year veterans, listen, man, it's not that I don't believe you and don't trust you, but I'm the one going to work on it. I'm going to make sure it's dead before I stick my hands in there. So Can't stress that enough.
It's the same thing that they taught us in the military: trust but verify.
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'll say that one of the bigger problems that you'll have on like a wide scale pure underground system, you may be grounding at 20, 25, 30 spots. to cut one cable in a manhole, one set of cable, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the times and that's getting done, that's switched out and grounded prior to you even coming in.
Yep.
You have every right to drive around to every one of those spots and check it. That is a rule. That rule is in place for that exact reason. So that you can go and verify unless you physically did it, you go back there and you put that, no, I 100% agree with you on that, for sure.
So let's hop over a little bit in now. I think we've probably covered the identification part, right? And what happens if you don't. So now we're getting to the point of cutting, right? And so multiple ways to cut cable, right? Everything, obviously depending on size, you can go all the way from your, Klein pliers all the way up to, multiple different types of manual cutters to remote cutters, you name it. So let's talk about some of the advantages, Mark, where, maybe in this, why would I use remote cutting tools over traditional cutting tools, right? What's the advantage?
All right. Yeah, I had, first and foremost, this one is a huge passion of mine that I really, truly want to get out of the industry. I know it's used a lot across the industry because it is one of the cheaper tools, but this spiking tool, okay? So there are basically 4 options. You can use a hydraulic spiking tool or air spiking tool. Use your 8-foot insulated ratchet choppers, something for like a trench, a hydraulic cutter, or the Bluetooth, mobile cutting thing. So
yep.
let's dive into a little bit about the spiking tool. So and here's the procedures, right? So the point of the cable or the point of the cut or the point of anything, correct, is to identify it, make a cut so that we can properly test it and verify that that's the cable that we're on. If we do that with a hydraulic cutter, insulated stick cutter, and Bluetooth cutter, they're all giving you a cut right through, and that's fine. With the spiking tool, it's putting a spike in that cable. You're going to go and test that cable. Are you going to put your hands on that cable and cut it with your hand? I sure help wouldn't.
Nope.
Because I don't know if that spiking tool even went through the insulation. It could be bent. If you're using that on million cable all the time, that V that housing sits in, the cable sits in, it gets bent. Now you're riding that down that insulation, and you have just enough insulation because there's not a lot of load on it, right? You have just enough insulation to not feed any of that 1 amp that happens to be on that cable right now.
Right.
Okay? And then you go and cut that. So why would you even utilize that spiking tool? It's got to be cut anyway. Get that thing get it out. If you guys have them out in the industry, please do me a favor and get rid of them. Just my 2 cents. So let's go on to the other tools. We're going to have your 8-foot chopper. A lot of those are used in a URD setting. You dig a 4x4 trench. You can physically see that you're getting on the cable that you're on, and then you just come back and you're 8 feet away. Okay? Not the greatest, because if it's the bad cable, that's fireball still coming up and everything, but at least you're out of the, you were talking about pinch points in the thing. I would call that line of fire.
Yeah.
So as long as you're not in the line of fire, you can get yourself out. That's great. But we have 2 other tools that we can get even further away. Okay. So with these 2 tools, there's a couple things that I have to tell everybody about that needs to be addressed, right? First and foremost, the hydraulic cutters. That's what I came up with. They're amazing. You have to put non-dielectric hydraulic fluid in there, right? You put non-dielectric fluid in there, you cut through a live cable, you're good. If you have regular hydraulic fluid, you are now energized, okay? All of that's blowing up. Now you're getting, who knows how much hot oil spraying all over, catching on fire, right? When you hold those, you're always supposed to have your rubber gloves on. So regardless, you're not going to get zapped because if you're following your procedure to cut, you have your rubber gloves on that handle. But that oil can spread. So there's a You send a groundman, you tell him to go to a store and say, just get me hydraulic oil. You're busy, you don't check it, you just pour it in. He doesn't know any better. You haven't told him what you need to get. So there's a little bit of an issue that you can have. Now with the Bluetooth, I'm not going to give up the manufacturer, but there is a manufacturer out there that's very well known for having these products. If you don't program it correctly, the jaws chop on you. So if you're down in the manhole and you didn't program it and you decide to program it down the manhole and it's wrong, you're getting a cable cut right in front of your face.
Wow.
So you got to know how to use your tools. And we're going to talk about that when we go back. So all 4 of those, right? I would just say 3 are okay. I wouldn't use a spiking tool. But they all come with the lack of training can cause catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right? So, I hope that explains a little bit more. Like I said, I like the hydraulic because you're 40 yards away. You have a 20-foot hydraulic hose, and you have a 20-foot extension cord. So I'm outside of the vault or whatever, and I can hear it, and then when it goes through. And then the additional thing is, taking yourself out of line of fire, but you can hold those tools up. So when you're in a manhole, you can have it where it doesn't swing and drop and do all those things, right? So the bigger tools allow you to anchor it to the ceiling and be able to cut where you're at. So that has a little bit of advantage of like the spiking tool. You're just putting it in there, and then you could probably hang it, but it's probably going to drop a little bit as well. So I think that the advantages to having the Bluetooth and the hydraulic, I think better than the other 3. So or the 2. So hopefully that answers that question for you guys.
I think probably we kind of covered number 5 there as well, some of the common mistakes that people make. I think we've talked about it all episode, right, as far as mistakes and things. Is there anything you want to add there, Mark, as when it comes to common mistakes with cutting?
I think is we have to, in our industry, we've got to stop handing out tools with 0 training.
Yeah.
So this is going back to the beginning of what we were talking about, right? I'm a journeyman. Once again, my first outage at one of the companies that I work with, most of them were down, the ones that I had the issues with were down south. It's a little bit different. Up north, pure manhole. Down south, a little bit different, right? But where I was at, you had to call to a supervisor and just say, hey, this is what I'm planning to do. Just want to verify and make sure that you guys are okay with that. I'm going to put in the as-built, so on and so forth. And then I had a couple bosses down here and be like, hey, you're the journeyman. I don't know, nor do I care. Figure it out. Well, I'm a journeyman with 24 years experience. What are you doing with the journeyman that just got his ticket? So I think that goes into it. Like I said, they just give those tools out and say, you're a journeyman, We all have different levels of experience. We came from different places. So that's the one thing on the common mistakes is we're far too often we get equipment with 0 training.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. It's we deserve, no matter what level of apprentice, journeyman, whatever the case may be, 10 years experience, 40 years experience. If something new comes out there, whether it's tools or equipment, we deserve as workers to have some type of, hey, this is how this thing works. This is how you use it. Watch out for this. Just can't stress it enough. And I've seen it just as you described it, Mark, where, hey, here's a new tool, go figure it out. You know what I mean? If you have any problems, give me a call. Well, yeah, I might not be able to give you a call if I, something goes wrong enough here. So,
right.
So,
yeah.
All right. So I guess to finish up, I do this with most of our technical guests, whatever we're talking about. So that one piece of advice, right? You're, whatever, maybe you're working on a crew and you got a new person and maybe not even an apprentice, right? It could be somebody new coming to your crew, whatever the case may be, coming to your company. When it comes to everything we talked about today, if you had to tell that individual or individuals one piece of advice that maybe you've acquired through your experience, or whether good or bad, what's that one thing that you would say, hey man, I'm going to give you this one, kind of the old dad to kid speech, right? Son, if nothing else, if you don't learn nothing else, what's that one thing that I want you to take away from this?
Yes. I kept it on point to what we were talking about, because I think it really hits home. So I said, so when cable identification and remote cutting procedures, when those are done correctly with a properly trained individual, you will never find yourself in harm's way, even if you happen to cut the wrong cable. And how can I make that statement true? Because if you follow all your procedures, you were never in the line of fire when you made that last and final cut. So if you follow your procedures to the T, you get yourself out of the line of fire, you should never have a problem. And that's what the important procedures are.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to do this, but the end result is, even if something bad goes wrong, you're not there to get hurt.
Today's show has been brought to you by T&D PowerSkills. Training and safety professionals face more pressure than ever to keep their line worker programs compliant, current, and cost-effective. And you have to maintain control of your training, and you can do that. Be a control freak with T&D PowerSkills. 78 units, deliver it in your way, whether you're doing short refreshers or managing a full DOL certified program. So you're controlling your delivery, you're controlling your message. You know exactly what's being taught to your people, and you're controlling your costs. You're going to know exactly how much it costs and for how long. So visit tdpowerskills.com, see how you can take control of your training, tdpowerskills.com. And while you're there, also check out our Trainers Conference and Trade Show coming up March 23rd through 26th in Orlando, Florida. We'll see you there. Registration opens up, I believe, next month or so.
Mark, I'd like to thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to come on here with us and share a little of your expertise with not only us. Like I said, there's a lot of times I did 5 of these with Jim Vaughn over the summer when Jerry was traveling, and I walked away from every one with something new. So, and hopefully our audience will as well. I mean, I've been hearing more and more feedback, so I think people are, it took a while to people to understand we were doing this and kind of get it out there, but I'd like to thank you for taking some time today and joining us.
Yes, no, I appreciate you, Mark, and Jerry. So thank you for having me. But
yeah, brother.
Yeah, on the thing is the more and more I dive into where I'm going, and I keep getting this. Where's the company going, and what are you guys doing? And the more and more I dive into it, the more and more I see, hey, what I thought the industry isn't. It's there is probably 90% electricians, inside wiremen doing my work in the contracting world.
Yeah.
Because there's none of me.
Yeah.
And then, even in the non-union, okay, there's a million non-union guys out there that are doing it. So the inside wiremen are doing it on the union side, and then just people with no training in the non-union. So we just need to correct that, because, my son, my daughter could be at the end of that shotgun in 3 or 4 or 5, 10 years. And if we don't change it now, we're going to see a drastic, craftsmanship issue in the future, I would say.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So fingers crossed. That's the goal, is to get out. And we sold our first curriculum. I don't know if I told you.
No, that's
congrats,
great,
man.
Good deal.
Yeah, so I did 19 chapters. I'm going to say it averages 25 pages a chapter, and they all come with PowerPoints, quizzes,
nice.
And then demos. And now I'm working on the lead one now, but basically cable pulling, splicing, URD switching, URD troubleshooting, yada, 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 you name it. But we sold the first one to a utility company in Connecticut. So fingers crossed, man.
Awesome.
Perfect.
I'd love to have you pick at I have an intro to substation, if you'd be interested in taking a read.
Okay.
It's written for a cable splicer.
Gotcha.
It walks you through the substation. This is what this is. Let's go.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about it.
That's
Just know
what it is, but don't touch it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're interested, I'd like to send you that if possible.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Appreciate that. So yeah, that's all I got, guys. Appreciate that.
All right, man. Thank you.
Jerry,
real
you
quick
wanna take
before
a
we
full
cut
break?
out of here, the views and opinions shared in this podcast are the personal viewpoints of the participants and may not necessarily reflect the stance of the Institute for Safety and Powerline Construction or its staff. It is highly advised to consult your company management before implementing any actions or policy changes. Please support our sponsors bringing this to you. TD PowerSkills, thank you so much for doing that. And also, for more episodes of the ISPC Tailboard Talks, subscribe in your favorite podcatcher and be sure to leave a review. We would love to hear from you. Also, if you want to hear about something, hear us talk about something, leave us that comment as well. We're always open to suggestions. Until next time, thank you. The ISPC, TD PowerSkills, and the Tailboard Talk.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Mark. We'll see you next time on ISPC Tailboard Talks.
Thank you, gentlemen.